Hi there, it's Sarah here, and I thought I would jump onto a video to say hello to you and to share with you the topic that I wanted to unpack today. And having just had my hair cut and blow dried, I thought what better opportunity than to get on camera when I feel good. And actually feeling good is the topic that I wanted to explore today, but more in the context of self-love. Now, when you hear that term self-love, I'm really curious to know, what does that bring up in your mind? What do you think that it means to love yourself? Because I'm going to be honest with you, over the years, any time that I've heard people say, you just need to learn to love yourself, or I've read books that have talked about self-love, more often than not, I've found myself rolling my eyes. Because as far as I could see, this whole concept of self-love seemed to be about saying 100 affirmations a day that I love myself, or I am enough, or I am worthy, or having scented candles and baths where I'm relaxing like some kind of goddess while still repeating my affirmations. And to me, that never really seemed to target what this whole almost elusive concept of self-love was all about. Now, over the last 10 years, I've worked with numerous coaches and change workers and energy workers on myself. And more than once, I've heard them say to me, Sarah, you really need to learn to love yourself. And at the time, I often pushed back at that. And my response would be, I don't need to learn to love myself. I do love myself. I'm a confident woman. Until something clicked one day, and I was thinking about the topic of confidence. Now, I do believe in myself, without having to do any affirmations, that I am a confident woman. And if I was to look at my life and look at the decisions that I've made, things that I've done, I knew that I was able to do them because I was confident in myself. I believed in myself. So leaving Brighton to move to Edinburgh, where I knew a grand total of 3 people, leaving behind an HR career and setting up as a therapist where I knew absolutely nothing about business, I still believed that I could do those things. There was still an underlying sense of confidence in my ability to pull these things off. Even going travelling when I was about 22 and landed in South Africa, which was my first port of call, not knowing what to expect, but just knowing that I could do that. But I recognised along the way, when I was exploring this subject of confidence, that I kind of mixed up feeling confident, feeling like I'm this independent woman, with self-love. Because when the penny dropped, so to speak, I'd been having a conversation with myself in my head, which I think we probably all do. And I've been quite tough about something on myself. I've been quite tough on myself about a situation. And this thought came to me that if I really loved myself, would I be talking to myself in this way? If I really loved myself, would I be giving myself such a hard time? If I really loved myself, why was I not being more compassionate, more kind, more forgiving to myself? And when I saw that, it really changed my view. It really changed my perception about self-love. Because I realized that so many of the thoughts that I thought about myself weren't necessarily that loving. There's been times where I've often thought, is there something wrong with me because I've not met the man of my dreams? Or maybe I have met the man of my dreams, but we're not still together. And those kind of thoughts, they're not particularly loving ones. And in thinking those kinds of thoughts where I was questioning, is there something wrong with me, or I was being really hard on myself, I also recognized in that moment was rejecting myself, rejecting who I thought that I was. So what became very clear to me is that when it comes to self-love, real self-love is the way that we treat ourselves. Real self-love is the way that we speak to ourselves. Real self-love, the conversations that we have with ourselves, which are kind, which are compassionate, which are considerate, which are loving and forgiving. And whilst I could do that sometimes, I recognised that I'd built up quite a lot of conditioned, habitual thoughts where it was almost kind of like my automatic response in certain situations was to be really hard on myself. To the point I've also had it said to me, God, sorry, you're so hard on yourself. And I'd be like, yeah, I know. But again, I hadn't joined the dots in my mind about being really hard on myself, wasn't really loving myself, wasn't really accepting myself and all the parts of myself. Because self-love, it's about unconditionally, from my perspective, it's about unconditionally loving each and every part of ourselves. And so the parts of ourselves, say if you're maybe sometimes quite judgmental, maybe if you're quick to blame, if you can get quite angry and worked up with people, all of these parts of you that make up you, all of these parts of me that make up me, it's about loving and accepting all of that, kind of warts and all, if you like. So one of the things that I started to do is when I noticed those thoughts creeping in that weren't loving, is to really catch them. Because what I also do know is that when you think a thought over and over again, it does just become conditioned. It becomes automatic. We can find that our thoughts actually are thinking us. And so I would be very quick to catch that thought and almost make a decision about, okay, am I going to give power to this thought? Because the minute I give power to that thought, I'm making it mean something. I'm rejecting myself. I'm putting myself down. I'm not being kind to myself. Am I willing to put my power in that thought? Am I willing to believe that thought? Or am I going to reject that thought? To reject that, you know what, it is just a thought. It is not about who I am. And I'm not going to lie, it's not something that was an overnight job, because, you know, we have about 60, 70,000 thoughts a day, and about 70% of the thoughts that you think are the thoughts that you had the day before and the day before and the day before, which is why they are so conditioned, so repetitive. They create stories about ourselves. And my underlying story, which I hadn't even realised I developed, was one of not being enough, not being good enough. And I would seek out opportunities to almost reaffirm that I wasn't good enough. So if my business wasn't doing as well as I wanted it to be doing, that was a sign that I wasn't good enough. I would seek out people to compare myself to kind of validate that belief that I wasn't good enough. And until I really got into this field, I didn't even recognize that I was doing that at a conscious level. I just found myself comparing myself, even back in my HR days, comparing myself to my colleagues, but without recognizing what it was that I was doing, which was reaffirming these beliefs that I'd held about myself. So stopping those thoughts, literally in the way that, you know, when you do a driving lesson and they teach you how to do an emergency stop, it was a bit like that. It was literally seeing these kind of thoughts try to make a noise, try to create a bit of haywire in my brain, and literally going, no, stop. I am not going to go there. I'm not going to give that thought my power. And sometimes that would just be enough. Sometimes it would be enough to just say, no, I'm not going to play that game today. And there were some times that I made the choice to think a better feeling thought. So there might be a thought that I had, or rather a whole string of thoughts that I had, and I would look to reframe them. I would look to, how can I view this situation? How can I view myself in a better way? How can I reach for a better feeling thought? Now, I'm not talking about positive psychology and positive thinking. It was just literally thinking, how can I create a different experience in this moment, given that all of our experiences are thought generated? So my invitation to you is, if you ask yourself, do I absolutely love and accept myself and all parts of myself in every single fibre of your being, in every cell, in every molecule, in every muscle, no matter what your past stories look like? If you absolutely love and accept yourself, then hats off to you. Keep doing what you're doing. But if that question is posing a few wobbles, if there is parts of you that are, I'm not sure I do fully love and accept myself, is to use this opportunity that when those thoughts creep in, to make a decision. Are you going to choose to give those thoughts a time of day? Are you going to choose to entertain them? Are you going to choose to give your power to them? Are you going to choose to even believe them? Or are you going to decide to take back control? Are you going to decide, you know what? I do love and accept myself. I do honour myself. I am proud of myself. Because if we think about the truth of who we really are, the truth of who we really are, the formless, pure consciousness that we really are, is already whole. It is already complete. It's just that through life, we've experienced situations and we've made decisions about ourselves from those situations. And often these situations have happened before the age of 5, because our core beliefs are created before most of us could read and write and walk and tie our own shoelaces. So the thoughts that we have about ourselves, the thoughts that I was having about myself, were ones that I'd created at this really young age, before I really had any proper precognition, any ability to reframe my experience. It's like living our life based on really, really old data. And that data doesn't say anything about the truth of who you really are. But we just get very used to thinking those thoughts, believing those thoughts, and those thoughts seeping into how we identify with ourselves. So recognizing when we're about to go down that train of thought and stopping. And even just that awareness of what you're doing, that train of thought that you're about to go on, can be a significant shift in itself. I know that from myself. Just recognizing that I was about to get on that train of thought, it was like, oh, there we go again. But getting off that train of thought again. Getting off that train of thought and thinking, no, I'm not going to go. I'm not going to go to that destination of lacking in self-love today. So I would really love for you to play with this, love for you to experiment with this, and give me your feedback about just how well you got on, and more importantly, what did it cultivate in you? What did it achieve in you that was about that feeling of self-love? So hit the reply button and let me know. But for now, sending lots and lots of love.